Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year or so, I've been featuring each fille du roi, or king's daughter, as we call them in English, and getting to know their stories a little bit better. We are now on episode 154. Lord, we have come a long way. The road is still long, but we're getting there. Now, before we proceed with today's episode, I wanted to show you how you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the loop. You subscribe, like, and notify. The next three are ways to help the channel grow. There's coffee, which is kind of like buying me a cup of coffee. Etsy, which I have a digital download of your fille du roi, which is very interesting. And Patreon if you wanted to become a monthly supporter. These are all ways of showing your support. So let's get to know our fille du roi of episode 154. So our fille du roi, her name is Jeanne Lecoq, and that means the rooster, just so you know in French what Lecoq means. It means the rooster. Don't know where the origin of that name came from, but it was a viewer request. I do not have her in my file, so I was delighted to be able to explore her life. Let's get to know Jeanne a little bit better. So Jeanne is born in Paris in 1639. Her parents were Jacques Lecoq and Jeanne Baudelot. And she was actually born in the first arrondissement. And the church that she would have been baptized is the Church of Saint-Roch. It's located on the Rue Saint-Honoré in the first arrondissement. The current church was built between 1653 and 1740. So that tells me that when she was born, it was even, obviously, when she was growing up, that would have been the church she would have seen, but would not normally, it didn't look this way when she was baptized, but that is her church. The first arrondissement of Paris is, remember that arrondissement is how Paris is laid out. And it is also known as Le Louvre because this arrondissement, it's located on the right bank of the River Seine. It also includes the west end of the Ile de la Cité, which is that island that we find in Paris. This locality is one of the oldest areas in Paris. And the Ile de having been the heart of the city of Lutetia, conquered by the Romans in 52 BC. I mean, you can't get much older than that. Well, you could, but not by much. While some parts on the right bank, including the Aube, date back to the early Middle Ages. It's the least populated of the city's arrondissement and one of the smallest because most of the territory is either occupied by the Louvre Museum, which you see over here, or Les Tuileries Gardens. The Forum des Halles is the largest shopping mall in Paris. And so that is really, it's dedicated to businesses and administration. Obviously, when Jeanne was born and was living in that area, it wasn't it wasn't a business area, but it was certainly one of the most historic places even then. So let's see about her journey to new France. So after her father's death, she left for New France. She had a dowry worth about 200 pounds. She was 31 years old, so she was not young by les filles du roi standards. She arrived in Quebec City on July 31st, 1670. So the groom that she selected and who selected her, his name was Guillaume Dubout. He was born in 1626, also in Paris. His parents were Pierre Dubout and Marie Jérôme. He was actually born in the 4th arrondissement. You can see how the 4th and the 1st are close together. So they were actually neighbors. Now, the 4th arrondissement is known for being very expensive. It's got, the classic cafes and bistros and shops. But it's a mix of many, many different cultures. It's also known as, this arrondissement is known as the Hôtel de Ville because it's situated on the right bank of the River Seine. It also contains the Renaissance Square of Place des Vosges, the overtly modern Pompidou Center, and the lively southern part of the medieval district of Le Marais. And so the church that he would have been baptized in is Saint-Gervais, which the current church dates between 1494 and 1657. So that fits in. That was his church, and it would have been right there when he would have been baptized. So Guillaume is part of the 1666 census, and he's listed as a volontaire. I've searched for information. I'm sure some of you may know more than I. I believe that this means that he had finished his engagement and he was now free to work. If I've gotten this wrong, please correct me. This is what we have found in the 1666 census. So on the 8th of September, 1670, 4 years after we find him in the 1666 census, Jeanne and Guillaume are married in Quebec City. So Jeanne and Guillaume settled down in Quebec City. Let's review a little bit about this amazing city. It is the capital of the province of Quebec. 500,000 people live directly in Quebec City. It was originally named by the Algonquins, who named the area Quebec, K-E-B-E-C, Quebec, which in their native language meant where the river narrows. Quebec City lies where the St. Lawrence River narrows. Samuel Champlain founded a French settlement here in 1608 and called it Ville de Quebec, or Quebec City. The city walls which surround it still date back to this time period, making Quebec City the only city with remaining city walls north of Mexico. There is so much to see in Quebec City, but one of the places that I love to feature is the Maison Jacquette, which is the oldest surviving private residence in Quebec. It dates from 1675, and if you'd like to tour it, it's home to a famous restaurant appropriately called Aux Anciens Canadiens, roughly translated to our old Canadians or to our historic Canadians. And then we have, on the bottom here, we have the Place, the shopping center, which is one of the oldest areas, of this place. In terms of, it's probably the oldest shopping center in North America, because this is where the Petit Champlain, as they call it, and it is claimed to be the oldest commercial district. And then we have one of the more ancient kind of depictions of New France, and kind of a vintage map here as well. And this is where they made their home. So they would be blessed with twins, but those twins would pass away. Pierre and Marie-Marguerite did not make it to their first birthday. Very, very sad. Guillaume would himself pass away sometime between 1671 and 1672, and that would have meant they would have been married less than 2 years. So here we have Jeanne. She comes across, gets married, she loses her husband and her twins. I can't even imagine. Where does she go next? The next groom that would help her make this journey in New France was Martin Moreau. He was born in Vernoux-sur-Brenne. His parents were Gaspard Moreau and Marie Gallard. He is from the Pays de la Loire region, and inside of that, he's from the Département de Loire-et-Cher, the county. And the town that he's from is actually bordered by the Loire River and by the Sis River from east to west. So it's obviously very, very picturesque. And this town has existed as far back as the 4th century, with the first parish church being founded between 460 and 490 by the Archbishop of Tours at that time, which was Saint Perpétue. The Church of Saint Trinity that you see before you would have been built between the 11th and 12th century. So they would be married 18th of January, 1672. When you see a marriage this quickly, it's usually out of economic necessity. So the family would settle, or they would settle, at Charlesbourg, which is a borough now of Quebec City, a suburb. The origins of Charlesbourg began with the concession of the Seigneurie of Notre-Dame-des-Anges in 1626. The seigneurie extended from the Charles River northward And in 1665, the new intendant of justice, Jeanne, set out to establish 3 new villages further north on the plateau. This caused kind of friction with the Jesuits, who were the seigneurs of the area. They did not appreciate his meddling. The first of the villages consisted of 25 arpents. Remember, arpent means acres, square, in which a 5 arpent, 5 square, was reserved for the church. So let's have a look at this upper left map, and you can see Charlesbourg and how there's a little tiny square here in the middle, and all of the land is kind of like facing the church, and they're kind of a star-shaped pattern. And then they would establish Bourg Royal and Petite Auvergne. This is an aerial view taken in the 1960s. It absolutely looks like this. What makes this so unique, first of all, it wasn't done very often, and most of the seigneuries were they were linear, and so they were facing the river. This was facing the church, so I suspect it had something to do with, kind of making a community, so to speak. And we can see where Charlesbourg is on the map, and then you can actually see the church that exists there today. 1696, this is a depiction of the church as it would have existed during that period, and this is where they made their home. They would go on to have 3 children. Marie-Madeleine would marry Simon Dauvé and have 1 child who would survive. Marguerite would marry Jean Pepin and have 11 children. All of whom would survive. So the odds are, if you are a descendant of this family, you are Marguerite's descendancy. This would be your lineage. I would love to find out if anyone is related to Marie-Madeleine. And Jean-Baptiste, I don't have any more information. Possibly he died at birth. Don't know. I was unable to find the census for this couple in 1681. So no census that I can find. If someone has found it, please let me know. So they were married about 15 years. Marthe would pass away sometime between 1687 and 1689. And she finds herself a widow, and this time with at least 2 children. So the third husband, his name is Jean Fortunat de Laverdu. He was born in 1637 in Pont-l'Abbé d'Arnaud. His parents were André Fortuny and Marguerite Beaumont. And he is from Nouvelle-Aquitaine, and he is from the Charente-Maritime section. The Église, the church, Saint-Pierre, dates from the 12th century. It kind of really has, it's really like this picture makes me think that ever changed in this particular village. So very, very interesting. So Jean would marry Jeanne on June 27, 1689. Jean himself would pass away sometime after 1698. No death certificates or records for him. They would have been married less than 9 years. Jeanne would die herself on November 1st, 1707, in the hospital at Hôtel-Dieu du Québec. She was 68 years old. In 1729, there were 34 descendants. Here are some of my favorite resources. La Société des Filles du Roi, the Quebec Genealogical Society. Number 3, Nos Origines. 4, Généalogie Québec. 5, Migration, which is a phenomenal website. It is in French. You can translate, but it is in French. But it's an amazing website. Check it out. And then I have all the addresses in the notes section. And then we have Facebook, Filles du Roi Descendants. So we end our episode 154. What a life. Difficult, challenging that she led, losing 3 husbands, actually, losing 2 to 3 children, and yet still she managed to have descendants, of which my viewer is one. So the line has flourished despite all the hardships that she endured and all of the tragedy. She managed to make her mark. And for that, we bless her, we thank her, and we honor her commitment and her dedication to being one of the founding mothers of New France. Until I see you again on episode 155, au revoir.